happens when you try to access this menu before you have completed Chapter 1. No background, all the text and boxes are green as if you're running it on a much older computer. The same droning from the beginning of the game is playing rather than before the story, and instead of the normal narration that the game provides you, it's none other than Gaster commenting on what you're doing, being his completely normal and hinged self and offering very analytical remarks on what you do. Referring to copying files as reflections, going back on erasing files as sparing them, referring to empty files as barren, and speaking in past tense at some points for whatever reason, finding your behavior very interesting depending on what you do, his usual whole ominous shtick. His dialogue here honestly has a lot to unpack, as his vocabulary regarding the save files gives them this lifelike nature in a sort of unsettling way. Copying files, he describes it as a division if onto an empty file, and warning that the file will be subsumed or absorbed if you're copying onto an already occupied slot, describing them as shapes and the such. And if you copy one save slot onto the other two so that all of them are the same file, he says preparations are complete, which is incredibly odd. It's not really describing it in a way that save menus normally describe this kind of stuff. It feels vaguely like the decisions you make in this version of the menu carry more impact than simply copying or erasing stuff. And this is the only time you can ever see this menu. Chapter 2 doesn't even have this presentation to the save select, as before you complete it, it has the same narration as it would after completing the chapter, but just a different background and music. But there's another thing about this version of the save menu that is exclusive to it. Credit to Half-Bred Chaos's video for this, as they just find it fucking baffling. Looking in the code for this menu, there is a variable that is simply just called threat. What the hell is a variable with that name doing in a save select menu, you might be wondering? As Half-Bred explains it, and after experimenting with it myself, this variable is a number that starts at 0 but goes up by 1 every time you reach this specific prompt when you attempt to erase a save file, and the game hits you with the "Are you really sure?" It doesn't go up if you delete the save file, it just goes up by 1 if you get to this prompt at all, so you can spare it and it'll have the same effect. But when this number gets up to 10 and you back out of this prompt, the variable resets and Gaster just says, "Very interesting." This is the only time you can get this specific line out of him. Why the hell is the game tracking something so specific as how many times you might have backed out of deleting a save file last second? Let alone in one of the least seen versions of this menu, and why does Gaster comment on it?
Alright, so let's start with a really obscure fact which I actually did happen to mention in my previous Mario video. For whatever reason, if you go to overwrite another save and say no more than 10 times, then when you finally do say yes, Mario will do a little alternate pose. Either this sad hunched over pose like he's silenced, or this angry XOR pose. I believe the sad pose is for odd numbers and the angry pose is for even numbers. Honestly, this is such a weird Easter egg, like who's just gonna accidentally click no over 10 times?